Okay, so everybody sees my slides, yes?
Yeah.
All right, great. Okay, so welcome back to From Stress to Strength. I hope a lot of you were able to process last week's concepts. We're going to discuss them even further. Does anybody have any questions before we kind of launch into the content or the material? Okay. All right, you know this slide. We'll do this slide every time. We're going to be talking about the mind, body, soul. Today is another module of the mind. We're going to get a little geeky about the inner workings of the brain and then kind of expand and talk a little bit more about the mind. So understanding how things work inside our brain can be really helpful for those who just want to know the mechanisms of how things work. I am one of those people. And so it's my perspective, and there's some research that supports that the more we know about ourselves and the deeper levels of self-awareness we have, the happier we are, the better our relationships are, and the more we experience fulfillment. So this exploration does give us an opportunity to understand and practice metacognition. And all metacognition is the process of thinking about one's thought process. So it's knowing what your cognitive processes are and understanding the patterns behind them. So it's important for a variety of reasons, right? So there's effective learning, there's problem solving, there's self-regulation, critical thinking, and lifelong learning. So the effective learning as it relates to metacognition, it basically helps you identify what you know and what you don't know. So it basically allows you to focus on your efforts and identify any areas of improvement that may need to happen. Problem solving. So by understanding your thinking process, you can develop strategies to tackle complex problems more effectively. Self-regulation. So metacognition empowers you to monitor your progress, adjust your learning strategies, and stay motivated. There's this critical thinking aspect of the metacognition, so it encourages you to ask questions about your assumptions and evaluate information and to make informed decisions. So that's kind of what I call making empowered decisions. It's coming from a place of wisdom. The lifelong learning process in metacognition is essential for continuous growth, right? For development. It enables you to adapt to new challenges and learn from your experiences. So this is the slide that we talked about last week. We kind of possess this internal GPS system that's inside of us, right? So the mind is our map, providing this cognitive blueprint. The body is the compass, and it offers us sensory feedback and physical cues. And the soul is really our GPS, right? It provides the ultimate direction, so our true north. And the questions that I asked you last week, and I'm going to continue to ask you, is what is your inner GPS whispering? And I know it sounds kind of like an ethereal, conceptual question. How do you access your inner wisdom daily? And then what practices do you find most helpful? So these can guide you in each module. Okay, so we're returning to this activity where we left off last week. Whether you did this fun homework or not, it's okay. You don't have to have had done it, but we're going to have a chance to practice it right now. So if you have access to the slides from last week, the limiting beliefs, if you can identify the limiting beliefs, actually, I can probably add this into the chat if people need. Let's see. So these are the slides from last week. You can open them up and look to see what the limiting beliefs are. There's a list there. So if you go through some of those, what I'd love for you to do is identify one or two of them. And you can modify the wording if the wording doesn't fit for you, if it just isn't working, you can modify the language. Okay. If people want to give me a thumbs up, if they can access the slides and if they've come up with their limiting belief. I'm getting a Nikki's shaking her head. You can't access the slides or nope. Okay. Um, Hillary can access them. Okay. Let's see what comes up. Oh, okay. Thanks, Hillary. I didn't access them. But you have one regardless. Okay. So that link should take you to the slides. If it doesn't, I could probably access them for you. Okay. I'm going to open up my other slides for you. Sorry about that. Let's see if I can get there easily for you. Okay. Share screen. Okay. All right. Can we see the limiting beliefs? Yep. Okay. So this is about work. If it's easy, you can just take a screenshot of this. If whatever your limiting beliefs are about work. There's another one about self-worth and health. Each of us has different areas of focus, right? So it might be our health, it might be relationships, might be work related. There's some about money and abundance. Okay. I'm going to keep going. So here's relationships. Okay. All right. Are we good with the limiting beliefs? Okay. I'm going to stop sharing and get back to our other one. See how it goes. Alrighty. Okay, so whatever your limiting belief, just hold that in your mind. We're going to go through some of those questions that we did last time. So the number one question is going to be, is it true? The second question is going to be, can I absolutely know that this is true? The third question is, how do I react when I think this thought? The fourth question is, who would I be without this thought? And as I've said before, this this takes some some time to really sit and simmer with. We could probably write a book on who you would be without the thought. And you can return to this exercise over and over and over again. The fifth question, we're going to keep asking questions, and ultimately we're going to kind of turn this around, this thought around as much as possible. The fifth question is, do I see a reason to drop this story? Right? So if the thought is I'm chronically stressed, or I don't know how to get out of debt, or I'm miserable at work, right? Do I see a reason to drop the story? Oh, okay. Thank you, Hillary. So the question is, can you give me some examples of answers to these questions? Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. A limiting belief might be, hmm, let's just say the limiting belief is I can't find a supportive partnership. Like I just have not been able to find a supportive partner. So the number one question, is it true? Oh, okay. Happy to help, Hillary. Here we go. Okay. Is it true? Is it true that I can't find a supportive partner? It might be true initially. Can I absolutely know it's true? Well, my guess is that there have been patterns of relationships that have been unsupportive. My guess is that there's also been relationships that have been supportive. We just haven't known how to engage and interact with them in positive ways. And it might have been really brief. The third question, how do I react when I think this thought? So when I think of this thought, if if I can't find a supportive partner, how do I react? Well, I get tight in my chest. I feel like I'm going to throw up. I get sad and frustrated that I can't connect with people in ways I really want to. Who would I be without this thought? I would be happier. I would be excited to try to connect with people. I would feel calm in my body. Um, and the fifth question, do I see a reason to drop this story? Good question. Do I see a reason to drop this story? Well, I'm going to guess that the story causes a whole, or the thought causes a whole lot of distress, right? In our mind, body, soul. So yeah, maybe there's a reason to drop it. Here's the tricker. There might be a reason to keep it, because sometimes the stories keep us safe. It's when we identify and notice that sometimes the story keeps us small when we're trying to connect with people. This is where coaching can kind of come in. So this isn't just like this really easy, straightforward process. Um, can I find one stress-free reason to keep this story? So that's the sixth question. Can I find one stress-free reason to keep this story? And that might be, and we'll get into this in our body modules, but if we're going to go with this same example about finding a supportive partner or friend or someone in our life, a stress-free reason might be there's so much of turmoil in my partnerships, in my friendships, that my body is so taxed that I just can't really connect with people without getting so worked up. My nervous system might be on overdrive. So a stress-free reason, it's like, well, maybe maybe I am not finding supportive people. Maybe I need to just really focus on calming myself down and doing some maybe inner child work, really loving on myself so that I could connect with people. That might be a stress-free reason. Okay, the seventh question. Who would I be without this belief that? So who would I be without this belief? It's a similar question as before. So you get to investigate this question and this belief even deeper. And you're challenging all the alternatives. So when we get into this slide says, apply the proof of truth, applying inquiry to an underlying belief. Essentially, what you're doing is acknowledging the belief you have, and then we're going to try and turn it around. So I'm just going to give you a different example. I'm so stressed that I can't seem to get ahead financially. That's the belief. Here's the turnaround, and it's gonna mess with your head. I'm just gonna tell you this right now. I'm not stressed that I can't seem to get ahead financially. So what happens when I say that out loud? You're like, that makes no sense, Bethany. Why would you say that? You know, you probably want to argue with the statement. Your inclination is to probably fight it, to resist it, and that's normal. So our deeply held beliefs are kept mainly in our unconscious and implicit memories for protection and efficiency. So this is why dismantling some of these can be so challenging. So you might be experiencing some frustration and annoyance, maybe irritability, confusion. You like, Bethany, this makes no sense. Stay with me because I promise we'll get there. So it's normal. Remember when I said this process isn't very comfortable? It's not. I'm trying to make it as fun and as easy as we can. It's also, there's a little bit of rub involved. So I want you to just take a moment, close your eyes, and just take a couple deep breaths. So when you think that thought, just notice what comes up. If there's frustration, if there's irritability, if you try to turn it around and you experience resistance, what happens? Just keep focusing on your breath. I want you to really pay attention to it. There's no need to change it. You don't need to force it to be deeper or longer. You just be with it. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So this is a process where you can journal more. You can, if you're like me, I'm an external processor. I love talking things through with people. That's partially why I'm a therapist, partially why I love therapy, is because there's some externalization. So journaling, talking things out can be a really helpful way to talk through some of this because our beliefs get so ingrained. We start to believe them as truth. And we'll talk about why that is. So just for a moment, I want to talk about toxic positivity and magical thinking because I think those conversations are important as we're talking about trying to reframe your thinking. Because it might sound a little Pollyanna that I'm like, oh, just change the way you think. It's not that easy. So, toxic positivity refers to a dysfunctional way of managing emotions that involves avoiding, suppressing, and rejecting negative emotions, or what we call negative emotions. Personally, I don't believe in negative positive. I think it just is. We just acknowledge what the emotions are and navigate through them. It can also involve denying one's own emotions and someone else's emotions and just sort of insisting on thinking of the positive. You just focus solely on that, right? So toxic positivity can also manifest socially when someone dismisses another person's negative emotions by suggesting a positive emotion instead. So we sort of invalidate people by saying, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. If someone says, um, Brene Brown has this really great video, and she talks about, a friend goes to another friend and says, unfortunately, I just had a miscarriage. It was really hard. And the friend says, oh, well, at least you can get pregnant. It's like, no, that's not helpful, right? You're not actually acknowledging or empathizing the grief around the loss. So it can be harmful because it prevents people from processing their emotions and overcoming their distress. So it invalidates the person's experience, which leads to a feeling of isolation and misunderstanding. So, um, some ways to respond to toxic positivity is sort of validating emotions. So it's like, that sounds hard. It makes sense that you feel that way. I'm here for you, right? Magical thinking is a bit different. It's the belief that one's ideas, thoughts, actions, and words or symbols can influence the course of events in the material world. So magical thinking presumes a causal link between one's inner personal experience and the physical world. So I bring this up mainly because this is our attempt to understand and make sense of our life experience. Most of us are meaning-making beings. We're deeply trying to understand why things happen the way that they do, especially when big events happen. Makes us really question these really big existential questions. So we want to believe we have influence over our lives. There's some element of control. So with that said, research supports that the energetics of the heart-brain connection does confirm that our nervous system has an influence. So there's this other training that I offer. It's called the Art of Healing. Essentially, we go into this heart-brain connection and what that looks like on an energetic level. But for the sake of this, we're going to talk more about the neuroscience. We're going to get a little geeky with the brain. So for those of you who are familiar with the brain, welcome. For those of you who aren't, also welcome. I'm just going to give you kind of a rudimentary overview. I'm not a neuroscience. I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not an expert in the brain. I just know kind of the basics and how things are related to our emotions. This overview is merely just to give you a sense of where things are located. Um, so our brain is kind of like, if anybody's seen the Inside Out movies, I'm a huge fan. If you haven't seen them, they're so good. And they provide really great explanations for how our emotions work and what's kind of happening at the control center of our brain. So our brain is like a group of experts. All of the parts of our brains are working together, and they have their own special responsibilities. So the brain can be divided into three basic units. It's the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. So the hindbrain includes the upper part of the spinal cord. So the brainstem, and it's this wrinkled ball of tissue called the cerebellum. The brain controls the body's vital functions. So such as respiration, heart rate. The cerebellum coordinates movement and is involved in learned movements. So when you play the piano or hit a tennis ball, you're activating the cerebellum. The uppermost part of the brainstem is the midbrain. So this is the control of reflexes. Part of the circuit involves the control of eye movements and other voluntary movements. The forebrain is the largest and most highly developed part of the brain. So it consists primarily of the cerebrum and the structures hidden beneath it. So I'm going to skip over some of this other stuff, but essentially the cerebrum is split into two halves, right? So there's these hemispheres by this deep fissure. The two cerebral hemispheres communicate with each other throughout this thick track of fibers. It's called the corpus callosum. So although the two hemispheres seem to mirror each other, they're different. So for instance, the ability to form words seems to lie primarily in the left hemisphere, while the right hemisphere seems to control many abstract reasoning skills. So nearly all of the signals of the brain to the body and vice versa cross over on their way to and from the brain. So this means that the right cerebral hemisphere primarily controls the left side of the body, and the left hemisphere controls the right side. When one side of the brain is damaged, the opposite side of the body is affected. So, when someone has a stroke on the right hemisphere of the body, it can leave the left arm or left leg paralyzed. So there's this conversation around gray matter when we're talking about the cortex. So the cortex is gray, which becomes or is gray because of the nerves, and it lacks the insulation that most or other parts of the body appear to be white. So the folds in the brain add to the surface. Um, we'll get to like the next slides of like why that's important. So if you look closely at this slide, it gives you a more detailed description of what's happening and what's happening where in the brain. So the functional areas are broken into 14 distinctive sections. This is just kind of a visual and gives you a little bit more of where things are happening on a sensing, behavioral, and processing perspective. As you can see, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of coordination, and it's sort of like this beautiful orchestra. I love the brain. It's fantastic to me. So the conductor of this orchestra is the prefrontal cortex. So that's the front part of the brain. It's probably my favorite just because it's involved in like all the planning and all the organizing. Um, uh, they say that that's kind of where the personality center is located. I don't know exactly if that's true or not, but that's that's what the conversation is. So the prefrontal cortex intelligently regulates our thoughts, actions, and emotions through extensive connections in other brain regions. It doesn't develop until we're 25. So for anybody who has children or knows anybody who has children, uh, that's why this is frustrating for 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 young adults that seem to be acting like they're adults, but not necessarily because their prefrontal cortex has not developed yet. So 25 people, hang in there. um, all right. So how does this all relate? Why is it important? I'm just like blathering, right? So our brains are really complex organs. The concept I want to teach you is really about neuroplasticity. This is the biggest concept that I teach over and over and over again. What we think over and over again becomes habit. We build neural pathways in our brains when we practice thoughts daily. So this image kind of shows you what happens and tracks in your brain if you think about something over and over again. So neuroplasticity is also called brain plasticity. It's the brain's ability to change its structure and function in response to stimuli. So this process can occur throughout life, which is super cool. We didn't think that was true 20 or 30 years ago. We thought the brain just was what it was and then we die. But you can change it until the day you die, which is super cool. So it can involve the formation of new neural connections, changes in the strength of existing connections, and an elimination of synapses. So it's the ability to change neural networks in the brain. You can grow new connections and you can reorganize. So when the brain is rewired to function in some ways, it differs from the previous function. So again, the way that I kind of describe it to people is like if you think of it like this. If you drive down a 4-lane freeway every day, what is that, right? It's you're driving down this really well-traveled path, right? It's built from concrete or asphalt or guardrails. Like there's a lot happening there. If you drive it often, it becomes second nature. You don't really have to think about it. So now if you consider an off-ramp or you're trying to build a new road, how difficult that is. You really do have to be conscious about getting from point A to point B if you are taking an off-ramp or if you're building a brand new road. So it takes a lot of effort to try to build that road. It's the same thing in our brains. So if you go on autopilot on a moment to moment basis, you're just going to kind of rethink that thought, rethink that belief over and over and over again. If you practice it, we've got to find an off ramp. And so the off ramp is the neuroplasticity. So it really requires slowing yourself down, which is why some of these exercises probably feel really painful because you're like, can we just get to it? Right? I mean, if you're anything like me, that's how I felt when I first started this work. I was like, can we just be healed already? Can it just be better? So it's a slow, arduous process because not only that, we also have to pay attention to what our bodies are doing. And we'll get more into that in module 3 and 4. So the limiting beliefs and cognitive distortions are your mind's autopilot that you may not have any awareness of, which is why the awareness piece is important. So you might get stuck in these thought patterns over and over again. They might show up at different points in your life and you think, I thought I already handled that. And then they show up again, and then they show up again, and then they show up again, right? So you're falling back into that groove, that neuropathway groove. Okay, so we talked just very briefly about gray matter. Gray matter is a darker outer region of the brain that's made up of neuron cell bodies, or soma or unmyelinated axons. So basically, the gray matter is a large number of neurons that are present. So it allows to process information and release new information. The gray matter throughout the central nervous system enables individuals to control movement, memory, and emotions. So gray matter is responsible for many functions in the brain, including processing information, controlling movement, memory and emotions, thinking and reasoning, right? So these are all really important. Gray matter appears darker often on sections um, that you see on like brain scans. So basically, why is it important? It's important because it's essential for many aspects of our life. So it actually includes things like cognitive processing, emotion regulation, motor control. As the brain's tissue that processes sensations and perceptions of voluntary movements, gray matter is also responsible for intelligent thought, memory, decision making, language, and attention. So research indicates that brief mindfulness meditation induces gray matter plasticity. So that's the connection, suggesting that structural changes in part of the brain that is a key hub associated with self-awareness, emotion, cognition, and aging may have important implications for protecting against mood-related disorders or aging, cognitive declines. So it's all about mindfulness, right? So, and I know it's like not new, but within the last handful of decades, new-ish in the vernacular of what we do on a daily basis, but it really is just being present without judgment on purpose, right? Like you're choosing to just pay attention to something that's in front of you. So I tell my clients that mindfulness, albeit be it formal practice or informal practice, and the way I define that is formal practice is the act of sitting or laying down. It's sort of like staying in a position, right? Informal practice is really anything that you choose to do, but you're actively engaged. So it could be listening to a song, taking a walk, right? Either one of these practices, the formal practice, the informal practice, improves well-being and it improves gray matter. So these mindfulness practices pull our attention to the present moment, giving us power and control over our lives. So by living in the now, we give ourselves permission to experience life as it is, not life as we wish it would be. I mean, believe me, I wish I did not have this right now. It's really uncomfortable. Um, and it is, right? So that radical acceptance, it is what it is. So this image describes the effects that there is meditation, how it impacts the brain. So MRI scans have shown that meditation increases the ability for the brain to process information faster, which I knew, but I didn't really know until I started practicing mindfulness. I always thought to myself, I even went through the mindfulness based stress reduction class like years ago in 2015. And I went through the whole course and I thought, this is so good. I feel like I'm so much more relaxed. And and then I didn't do the class anymore and I fell back into my patterns again. And I thought to myself, I don't have time to practice mindfulness. I just don't have time. And then I started my practice again and it was amazing. 5 or 10 minutes a day. And I got way more done by doing the 5 or 10 minutes. Because had I not done it, I just would have like pushed myself harder and harder, which didn't help my cognitive processing. So I say all of that because it helps improve focus and attention. It decreases stress and anxiety by downregulating cortisol and adrenaline, which creates this deep state of relaxation. It slows our breathing, our pulse rate, and improves our blood pressure. So meditation increases the whole brain function, synchronizing the left and right brain hemispheres, which increases balance and amplitude of the alpha, theta, and delta brain waves in your brain. So meditation also increases dopamine and serotonin levels by stimulating regions of the brain that are associated with happiness and positivity. So it improves cognitive function and the ability to sustain focus by increasing gray matter, brain volume, and cerebral blood flow. I told you we were getting geeky today. So um, we've talked a lot about the structures and some of the mechanisms of the brain. So now we're going to venture a little bit into some of the philosophical, esoteric questions. Because if there's anything I've learned, it's that we're actually not our brain functions. So we as a collective, we as individuals are bigger, more complex, and powerful than I think we even give ourselves credit for. So some questions I would love for you to just sort of either think about in your mind, you can write in a journal, you can refer back to these slides after we're done. But so these are some bigger questions. And if you're struggling right now with a stressor in your life, they might they might cause you to stop and wonder. Okay, so the first question, who are you? Who are you? Are you your thoughts? Are you your upbringing? Are you your family name, your genetics, your physical form? Are you the way your brain functions? So consciousness at its simplest is like the awareness of internal and external existence. So however, um, its nature has led to millennia of analyses and explanations, and it's been debated by philosophers and theologians, scientists. Opinions differ about what exactly consciousness even is, right? Um, just kind of an aside, but just to kind of give you a little bit of more information about me. Some of you know I was in a PhD program for a while, cultural studies and social thought in education. And I took this course that still haunts me. It was called the epistemology and ontology of thought. And basically, epistemology is the theory of knowledge, with regard to its methods and validity and scope. And it's like this investigation of what distinguishes justified belief from opinion. And then ontology is just the branch of philosophy that studies existence. And we had this debate over and over in each class, like basically what's real, what's real knowledge, what's real belief. And I just wanted to bang my head against the wall because I was like, all of it. All of it. You can't just have one belief, right? You can't just be in that like knowledge is storytelling, or knowledge is statistics, or knowledge is I couldn't land anywhere. It was really frustrating. I think I was probably the only one in the class. So we were debating how we knew what we knew in society. I'm basically just sharing this with you because it's sort of my approach and my belief that everything is valid, um, and it really takes on our own approach to life to decide how we want to incorporate some of this knowledge and wisdom, right? So, I mean, this you can go evaluate this question or not. It's okay, but I'm wondering, how do you know what you know? And when is it important to evaluate what you think? And then a question that just I'm still grappling with is, what if you think what you think is false and it triggers you? The truth triggers you. So if you have a thought, maybe it's false, but and the truth triggers you, and you just like, I don't want to think about that. Then what? So as we evaluate these limiting beliefs and these cognitive distortions, and we're trying to play with other thought processes, can you explore these other options? And the reason I'm asking these questions is because your brain is not your mind, and your mind is not your brain. So by this, I mean our brain is a complex organ, and it works in concert with other bodily organs. It's an amazing thing. And our brains are not our minds. There's something else happening. There's like this mysterious thing that's happening in each of us, right? We can observe our experience. If anyone does mindfulness or meditates or any other practice, you can kind of take a step back and sort of observe from afar. You don't have to be so immersed in it. We didn't talk about cognitive fusion last time, but essentially cognitive fusion is this idea that, or this concept that you think a thought and it actually becomes your truth. It becomes your identity. It becomes who you think you are. So I'm just a person who can't get close to people because they hurt me. Or I'm just a person who makes this certain amount of money and I can't do anything different. You start to believe those things about yourself. All right. If you're willing, I'm going to do this again and I'll send it in an email, but still trying to kind of grow this process. This is a survey. I just put it in the chat, the survey, just to kind of give me some feedback on what's working, what's not working, today in particular. So remember this acronym. Are you paying attention to your thoughts? Are you mapping them? What do you notice? Are you being intentional about what your thoughts are? Are you cultivating the depth of understanding your thoughts and the core of your limiting beliefs? And then this quote by Swami Vivekananda, I really love this. It says, "We are what our thoughts have made us." So take care about what you think. Words are secondary. Thoughts live, they travel far. Okay.